Right there. Can y'all hear?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
There we are. There's the start of the evening. I just sent an email. Did it come through? Did everybody join us on Zoom? I think that Teams deal is trying to cancel out Zoom. So we're still Zooming. There's cars.
Yeah, I see the message.
Okay, it came through. Just reminding everybody that we'll stay in Zoom as long as we can. Meet these people. I can turn my video back on. There's Loretta. How's the dissertation business going?
It's going.
Now, remember, if you need me to check your AI, just put it in my assignment 3 in my shell, my dissertation shell, and send me an email so I'll know to go check it.
I was going to I had put mine on pause before I sent it to you, just trying to give Dr. Putman an opportunity to respond. Um and it's been over a week. So you know, I'm trying to do, you know, but I'm just gonna have to just move forward because actually
And
this week is week 2.
yeah, so
So
let me share my screen. And so let me get out of this and go here, here.
That's so crazy.
Curse, I jumped in later. Y'all talking about the AI.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Lamb, I think the last one I submitted to you, you sent back that it didn't flag anything.
Yeah. That's what I was just showing is that we took you did from showing everything to, let me see.
Yeah. And I did scrub it. I'm going to be
Yeah,
honest. I
yeah.
used
And,
something
and,
called
and
Walter
you know, I don't
Wright's.
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. And so my most recent, I did chapters 1 through 3, and I sent it to him, and it came back and said, "Yep, that was the first one."
That was the first one. That was the first one.
No, that's
Yeah.
not it either.
That was the first one. But you
Mhm.
sent one, let's see,
A
where
couple
did you
weeks
put
ago,
it?
maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, the
Yeah,
the one I was going to use for my proposal.
yeah. Let me look at it right quick.
That one.
Yep. And as you can see, it works.
So
And
the
that's the only
website
thing. That's the
that
only
I
thing I know.
used.
You just got to scrub them.
Yep, and I used one, oh, and I can't remember. I want to say it's called Walter Wright's or something like that. It was the same one. It's very similar.
Yeah,
I
I mean
just,
they're all the same. I
yeah.
can't recommend one over the other. All I can say is they work. And I hate that we have to do that, but I don't know what else to do. I mean, this deal about Grammarly just came in. I mean, people have been writing for a year or two, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, so
No,
It
I would
worked.
say
It
the problem
yeah.
I ran into when I submitted this one is when we were in Porter's class like
yeah,
2 semesters ago, and he didn't have Turnitin set up correctly.
right.
So it's still flagging my
Your own
Turnitin.
work, and then you have to exclude them one at a time.
Yeah. So
So when I
I
did that,
panicked
I got
because it
yours
showed
down to
it
11%.
right. But when it
Yep.
originally popped up, it showed my Turnitin over like 25%
Well,
having been plagiarized. But then when I looked, it was like 15% of it was my own work.
Yeah. I
yep.
did I did chapter 3 just to see I put it in there and scrubbed it. So it was pretty good
Yeah.
for chapter 3.
We're just gonna have to do what we have to do. I mean, I know it's your own work, uh, but I've got three. I scrubbed one last night. I got three more to scrub from the way back. I mean, you know, there ought to have been some kind of a grandfather, but there's not. So we do what we do. Um, but I'll be with y'all. Let's look at our weekly schedule. I'll be with y'all again uh, the weekend of the 8th and 9th. But I'm and Miss Sandy's got our class tonight. Um, but I just want to say again, um, I'm still with you. The important thing is not to lose your momentum coming out of 740. Now you've heard me say that 1,000 times, and I'm gonna say it 1,001. You got to come out of 740 with some momentum. Um, Especially coming out at Christmas time, all of a sudden you don't have classes, works, all that. And the next thing you know, the spring is gone. And then, summers, and then the next thing you know, it's time the schools start back and it's next October, and you're thinking, I need to get on this. And then, you get so discouraged because it takes you months to get back up to speed as to where you were. You don't remember anything. The trick is just keep pushing through, and so that we're ready for proposal sometime in January or February. That's the trick. And just like Cara said, some of these folks I think they wait 14 days just for spike to turn stuff around. Um, and that's not conducive to getting stuff done in a timely manner. I mean, only giving feedback twice a month. Um, And so, but you just got to stay at it. You just got to stay at it. I can't, I wish it was a different system, but it's not. So, whatever I can do to help you, I will. Uh, and we'll push and go, and as hard as we can go. Um, because if you don't propose in the spring, it gets exponentially harder to get focused on it and get it done. That first semester out is the real, that's if you can propose in that semester, you can get done in a reasonable amount of time. If you don't, it just seems to get away, especially if it's the spring, because there's hardly any time to propose in the summer. That summer is just so short, and most of it's blackout. And so
Oh dear.
it's hard. All right. I guess everybody's here that's going to be here. That's good. All right. So tonight, Miss Sandy is our lead tonight, and she's going to do her chapters. So I will turn my camera off so she can share her screen and lead our lesson tonight.
All right. Maybe it's this one. Oh. Okay, can you see the screen?
We can.
I think I did it right. Okay. Okay, so with planning educational facilities, I had chapters 10, 11, and 12. And chapter 10 was site selection and acquisition. So selecting a site where a new school can be built is often impacted by factors that are not within control of the school system. Some might be geographic area, the limited sizes of land plots, and increases in the price of land. So to avoid the issues with building a new school, districts will sometimes use existing structures like abandoned commercial buildings, museums, or even insurance offices. This can be cost effective, but has its own problems regarding issues with the location of the building or the renovations to the building being less than acceptable. So when choosing to build, school districts should consider land banking when possible, and this involves purchasing land in prime locations and with enough acreage for future needs. So then if districts do not plan for these needs, then land's typically not available in the right location or doesn't meet the needs of the school once it's time to build. Districts typically acquire a site through purchasing directly from an owner. However, there are other means of acquisition, including receiving a gift of a land, receiving surplus governmental property, or through exercising eminent domain, which is not as common. With a gift of land, the stipulations must be considered. So, for example, some housing development companies might gift land to a district with the requirement being that a school must be built on the property within a certain time frame and should include all residents. The district would need to consider whether or not the gift should be accepted or refused based on the capital improvement plan and also the contingencies of the gift. When considering a site, districts should be aware of mandatory standards from the state in relation to minimum acreage. The minimum acreage recommended by the Council of Educational Facility Planner International is 10 acres for elementary, 20 for middle, and 30 for high schools. But this is kind of difficult for urban schools, so it's a little different then. When planning, the district should consider the program that will be housed there, and that's the most important thing, and purchase a site that meets the program's needs. So considering public opinion, everyone wants a new school, but they don't necessarily want to live near one, or they might have their own opinions about where it should be. So when determining who to include in the site selection process, districts should determine whether or not to include the community and ensure that the policy is followed in relation to that choice. However, including the community will sometimes delay the process when they do not understand the requirements from the state or for different programming. Community members are sometimes helpful with identifying sites or with mediation processes. But they can also lengthen the process. A consensus on the site choice can take up to 1 year or longer, depending on issues. The superintendent selects the team members, and the team meets with all department heads to establish the criteria. So some examples of criteria might include the proximity of the center to the center of the student population, accessibility to the site, utility services available, and development costs within the school budget. So when reviewing the cost, The team should also consider the cost of land development and maintenance in relation to demolition, storm drainage, and sewage disposal. The team can discuss criteria with the community to indirectly involve citizens and then meet with the local planning commission to talk about possible sites. Typically, the team will use multiple resources such as highway maps, geographic information systems, topographic maps, and comprehensive plans of the county. These resources are usually maintained by the local planning commission. Once a list of sites is developed, information on each site is gathered and a physical inspection is completed. The evaluation of the site is completed by every single member, and then a total score is developed. The team should look for a high degree of consensus on the scoring, and then if there's not one, then the differences should be discussed, and the best evaluation should receive the first recommendation to the superintendent. The information is presented to the community and with the local planning commission approval. The superintendent can then make recommendations to the school board. Once the school board passes a resolution to acquire the site, the legal counsel draws up a contract and removes any liens. The school board must have a clear title to all property before any construction can begin. So then with Chapter 11, that was about employing the architect. The architect is vital to planning and designing the construction process for new school buildings, building additions, and major renovations. There are 5 basic services expected from an architect. Schematic design involves the architect developing the concept of the building, including every space within the building, the relationships between each space, and the functions of each space. The completion of the schematic design provides the completion of the perimeter of the building, and that must be approved by the school board. And once that perimeter is set, it does not change. During the design development stage, the architect works to design systems that are not structural, like electrical, plumbing, HVAC needs. Spaces within the building might change shape or change size. The completed drawings of the structure are finalized, and then the list of all the materials used or needed are documented through the construction document development stage. This provides the information for the bidding process. During the bidding process, the architect helps the school system secure bidders for the project, evaluates bids, and makes recommendations regarding how to reduce the project to save costs. The architect also recommends bid acceptance and negotiation. Throughout the project, the architect monitors the construction of the project to ensure that specifications for the educational needs are met. When selecting an architect, school districts may use several methods. The non-competitive method or direct employment is used when the district has previously worked with a satisfactory architect or when few architects are even available. The comparison selection method compares multiple firms based on credentials and previous work, and it requires more time for review. And then the design competition method involves providing building specifications to several different architectural firms who submit preliminary designs that are evaluated by a panel, and the winning firm is awarded the project. If the district uses comparison or competition methods, the selection process must be clearly outlined. The district must determine who participates in the panel, like community members, school staff, or district personnel. Including community members can lengthen the process, just like the site issue, but it can increase the transparency, so it just depends on the district. The district must also establish selection criteria. Architects must be state registered. The other factors like professional recognitions, association memberships, and design awards should also be considered. Experience with school buildings is definitely a plus, including the number and the size of the past projects that can help establish the firm's capability. Architects should present examples that reflect their quality of work and describe the staff who will handle the project. Firms must have sufficient workspace and personnel to complete the project on schedule. They should also demonstrate familiarity with the approval processes required for school construction, since many individuals must review and approve designs. Architects must be able to present and defend their ideas confidently. During meetings, districts should confirm the architect's genuine interest in the project and contact references to evaluate performance on previous jobs. By using a structured selection process and defined criteria, this can help find the best architect. After outlining the process, the district must decide how many architectural firms to include in the comparison in the interview phase. So they would gather a list of potential firms, and that can be obtained from the American Institute of Architects. And once that list is narrowed, letters are sent to every firm inviting them to submit proposals with the information gathered by the by the committee. These are collected and evaluated using established criteria and an evaluation instrument developed by the district. The evaluation involves several rounds of elimination. District representatives may visit firm offices to gather details on available staff, design technology, and just enthusiasm for the project. And site visits to recently completed buildings by each firm provide insight too into the design quality or sustainability, or just how well those users' needs were met now that the buildings are done. After these stages, some firms are removed from consideration. And then the remaining firms are interviewed by the school board, typically presenting their qualifications, their approach, and their experience. And then the board members ask a predetermined set of questions to ensure consistency and fairness. And once the firm is selected, the school board takes formal legal action to finalize a contract. An initial payment is made with additional payments tied to each phase of design completion. So after the schematic design, the architectural firm would then receive 15%, all the way down to the construction phase where they're just waiting on their 20% as they monitor that phase. Chapter 12 was about monitoring the design phase. So once the architect is approved by the school board, the educational specifications are studied by the staff of the firm, and then two teams are formed. The staff from the firm are known as the design team. The design team will often have an engineer expert and other experts related to plumbing or electric, and they'll also consult with other experts depending on the needs of the district. So they may need someone that specializes in theater design or library structures, depending on what you are building. The second team is the design review team, which consists of school personnel. The design review team helps the design team to understand the educational specifications and then approves each portion of the design. This team should include the staff member who wrote the educational specifications for the building, a staff member that can make formal decisions about the design work, and then another staff member should be one that has experience as a principal. The district can also include other staff members that might be seen as helpful, like a special ed director, depending on what they're building, a maintenance director, performing arts director. It just depends on what the district is targeting. The two teams work with one another to understand the end goal and the specific needs of the district. So they're constantly communicating back and forth and ensuring that the educational needs will be met, but also they're actually capable of building the structure. When developing the design, the architect reviews the site to determine the best building location on the site, and then creates a concept that includes all components needed for the educational program. Multiple concepts might be created at first, but then one ultimate final decision is made about the concept, and that one is selected for development. From the chosen concept, the architect produces schematic drawings and determines the circulation of students, where to house materials, where to put supplies, anything. Weekly meetings between the two teams ensure collaboration as the design and the exterior are finalized. And then the school board must approve the schematic design before moving on to design development. At this point, the specialists within the schools are brought in to review the design and determine whether or not changes need to be made. And each segment of the building is reviewed and each segment is approved. It's important for the design review team to ask questions and try to predict how the school will run based on the design. It's necessary to look for areas that might cause student traffic congestion to determine whether or not there's sufficient storage for certain programs, to know there's enough office spaces for support staff, all of the questions that a principal would ask. Throughout the design phase, the architect will prepare cost estimates for the school district to review, and the school district determines if the budget is sufficient, and then continues with the design phase if it is. And as changes are made, the cost might change and another estimate is presented. The space and the quality of materials are the largest factors that impact the cost. So when the estimated cost and the budgeted amount do not align, then they might be reconciled by either increasing the budget or decreasing the size of the building or using materials that are lower quality. All public buildings are governed by the uniform building codes of the state, which ensure the health and safety of the occupants of the building. The codes govern the types of material used, the space allocation, sanitary provisions, all of those things. So then local building inspectors review the building to determine if the building conforms to the codes, and then the permit can be issued. Architects and engineers must be knowledgeable to ensure that the design meets the codes. While the school board must approve of the project and the design, there might be some local government offices that must approve of the project also. So with school buildings, there are typically state offices that must approve of the project, like the Office of School Facilities, especially if that funding is from the state. So the architect must be aware of all of these requirements to make sure that he's always following these things as he makes recommendations. And that is all that I have.
All right, thank you. All right, I wanna take these individually and do a little practical exercise here. All right, so let me share my screen. All right, we can get over. When we start talking about a the site, the first thing that we should do is reference a population density map. And all this stuff is easily obtainable. All right, so right here. So if you look at this, I picked Rutherford County. You can see that most of the population is right in the center of the county, where the towns of Forest City, Spindale, and Rutherford on the old 74 are right in the center of the county. Now, let me go to another map. So if we look at this area right here is where the majority of the population of the county is by a long shot. You saw that. You go back to, you see that what I'm talking about? Pretty much all the population of the county is right here, right here. And so that's what this is showing here. All right. So when they wanted to build, the previous high school was right here at the top of Central High Hill. Uh, let's see. This was the location of the old high school, right in the middle of, right between these two towns, right here in the middle of this urban gridlock. And so, remembering population density, they didn't try to come back in this area right here. They went slightly north. Let's see. They went right here. The new high school is right here in this corner in Thompson Road. Um, and so let's see. They went 5 miles up the road, but it's still adjacent to the population center. See, so the notion on location here is a lot of times, as Sandy mentioned, and this is what I want to take off on here, that people who want to do housing want you to build a school where their housing is going to be. They don't want to go out. They won't. That's what contributes to the density problems that you have. I mean, that county's only got 65,000. It's like the fourth largest land-wise county in the state. It's only got 65,000 people. Why would you continue to build right on top of yourself? I mean, the highway infrastructure is not there. So they were smart enough to go 5 miles up the road. It's just 5 more miles up the road, right out of the edge of the density. There was plenty of property. They bought 180 acres. They were able to, to plan down the road to build a middle school there. And they made a good long range 40-year plan or so there and said over the next 40 years, right now we're going to build a high school, we're going to build a stadium, then we're going to be able to build a softball, baseball complex, we're going to be able to build a middle school, and they've actually got room to build an elementary school there. They long range that thing. Very smart. A very smart way to do things in that they didn't just piecemeal it and just build right on top of themselves and no way to get traffic in and out. And that traffic is a major issue. It only used to be an issue for high schools. I've told you that. I told you I make the ladies mad here in Lake Norman. I'm at the big house tonight when I say if you don't let your kids ride the school bus, how else are they going to learn about sex? You're going to have some uncomfortable conversations. But everybody thinks their kid can't ride the bus now. So, everybody drives to high school. Parents take their kids to middle school and elementary school. Traffic's your big issue. You gotta stay out of the density areas. The land will be cheaper. Trust me, if you build it, they will come. The houses will spring up around it, just like they have around the Central High School. They will come. Don't let somebody else push you into building someplace where you're going to have problems that you're not, you're landlocked, you don't have adequate parking, transportation, you can't have a separate entrance for your buses, those kinds of things. The beauty of that high school is all the car traffic comes in the front off 221 and all the buses come in off Thompson Road. They've got a separate parking lot. You can't even access them. It keeps parents from, dumping kids off in the bus lot and getting run over. So you got to be smarter about that. And you should always do long range in that we've got room if we have to build another building. We can build another building, even on to the one we got, or we can put a middle school. You know, that 10, 20, 30 that's not enough. Especially 30 acres for a high school. That doesn't start to touch what you need for a high school. But you should overbuy land, and if you have to, cut back on your buildings. But your site, um, you should be looking at a 40 to 50 year plan on your site, not just right now. Is Paula with us? As Paula said, they were just looking for right now, and they're already opening up the trailers in the new school in her county. You know, that's what we're talking about. That's how that happens. Is you're just looking at right now. And you might let politics get involved with where you put it rather than making a smart decision about where the most appropriate place is. Now, you know, even as superintendent, a lot of these are outside of your locus of control. I get it. The politicians get a hold of this stuff. But if you have a voice in this, you need to be the voice of reason and try to get folks to see that there's a down the line here. Let's make a better long range decision. Investing in schools is a big deal. It's the biggest financial investment that districts will ever make. And it has long term impacts. And you have to go get bond packages passed. And if you pass a bond, you build something that people don't like or it's not convenient, then they don't want to pass the next bond. Um, but because everybody was happy with the new school, everybody was happy with the traffic, didn't have traffic issues like at the old school, which was in the heart of downtown, had hardly any parking. Um, and didn't have enough adequate, we didn't have any practice fields. I mean, we had one baseball field and we had one football field. I mean, we didn't have a place for the girls to play softball. They had to go over to the park at Crestview and play and practice. We didn't have a place for soccer. They had to use the outfield of the baseball stadium. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Um, but that school was built in 26 when you didn't have those things. You had baseball and football. The only good thing about that facility was it did have a boys and girls gym, but that's because they had built another building in the back, the science building. They put a gym in. The federal government built it as a science building, but it was mostly gym. But you got to be thinking long range on this stuff. You can't just be thinking, this site will be good for right now. Will it be good 40 years? Can it last 40 years? That's kind of the idea. All right, picking the architect. The dumbest thing I ever saw anybody do was in Avery County, North Carolina. So let me see if I can get a picture of their high school. Let me share my screen. So, as Sandy said, they started interviewing architects. They started going out and looking at work. Let's see what Avery County's got. All right. Anybody know anything about Avery County? There's a picture of the building. All right, where's Avery County? Okay, that's where Sugar Mountain is. It's just out of Boone in the high mountains in North Carolina. And they went around and they looked at these buildings and they saw this building. They really liked it and they liked the architect. And somebody said, hey, why don't we just buy the same plan? That way it'll save us all this money. We'll just get the same plan that he used of this building we really like. And they built it. And here it is. All right. There it is. What do you notice about the pitch of the roof? What's the pitch of the roof? All right, somebody explain the pitch of the roof to me. It's how steep the roof is. All right, that looks like maybe about a 312. That means for every 12 feet this way, it goes up 3 feet that way. So that's about a 312 roof, about like that. Let's look at it again. You see that's not a very steep roof. Look at the other buildings. That might not even be a 312. What's the problem with that in Avery County?
Then you say that was the
Snow
mountains?
a lot.
No,
Knows a lot,
Snows a
Mhm.
lot. Yeah.
a lot. What happened to the roof before they even opened? Collapsed. The roof collapsed before the building ever opened from snow load. That's about a 312 pitch. You saw the rest of those buildings had nearly flat roofs on them. Guess where they fell in love with the architect in the building that they saw? Wilmington. And they bought that plan and saved a bunch of money until the roof collapsed before the building even was completed, before they could take occupancy, the roof collapsed. What did they have to go back and do? They had to go back and put a metal superstructure inside the building. If you're walking in that building now, even in some of the classrooms, there's metal poles everywhere holding up the roof. Can't make that up. I'm not smart enough. You know I'm not. But they say they saw an architect. They liked the design of the building. It was so beautiful. They went to Wilmington and saw it, and somebody said, "Well, we don't have to pay to have him design us one. We'll just buy the one that he used here." Except it was designed for Wilmington, where it never snows. And they built that building in Avery County, which has the most snow of any county in North Carolina. Can't make that up. So the whole architectural deal, yes, you want to see their work. Yes, you'd like to be able to save some money if they've got a previous design, but it has to fit your needs and your weather and your environment. That, I mean, how if you grew up in Avery County, how would you not know that building a nearly flat roof building would not be a smart thing to do? I mean, that's the part that escaped me. Now, if you're not from there and you didn't know, if you were there in the summertime, but if you grew up there and you knew that had more snow than any other county in the state, and that you've got more ski resorts than pretty much all the ski resorts are in that county, and it snows there all winter long, and winter starts there in October. How would you not know that you can't build a flat roof building? But they did. But again, they fell in love with the architect. They liked the design of the building. They could buy that same plan and not have to, pay probably saved them. There's no telling how much, probably paid a fourth of the cost of having one drawn that would fit them. Just bought the one that he did for somebody else. So you got to be smarter than that. Buying previous plans is not always good. Now, the second part of the architect, the first one is, do they know how to design a building for the weather and for the conditions that you're in? And again, if the firm has done something similar that you like in a similar climate, then you may save money just buying that plan. But that saving money costs them a lot of money in the long run. Now, the second thing about hiring an architect is their relationship with your general contractor. That's the most important relationship in the whole building process, is the architect and the general contractor. If they don't get along, if they can't work together, if they've not worked together before, you're going to hit a lot of delays and a lot of revisions in change orders. Change orders are dead. That means money and a lot of if you've ever been involved with instruction, you do not want change orders. And if the architect and the GC general contractor don't get along or don't see eye to eye, you're going to have problems. And not only that, um, the architectural firm is not the monitoring arm to monitor the general contractor. Let me say that again. People think when they hire an architect that they're going to monitor the general contractor. They do not. That's not their job. So if something's not done right and the architect says, no, that's not right, you say, well, why didn't you tell us before they did it? Well, it's not my job to monitor them. So that brings apart the third part of this that we didn't talk about tonight that has become a major part and that is construction monitoring firms. A lot of school districts now, instead of relying on their own people and their own expertise in their maintenance and facilities department, hire external construction management firms that specialize in managing school construction. I was involved with a group. I don't know if they're still in business, CCC, out of Burke County. We used them there. It was their job to monitor the general contractor, not the architect. When you employ an architect, you think, God, as much money as I'm paying them, but that's not part of their job. Now, either you got to have somebody, as Sandy said, you got to have a team internal to your district with those different roles that she had on her slide. You either got to have that team that, the design panel, the group, but even then, you've got to have somebody that knows construction to monitor the construction. I would say that in today's world, that it's a fool's errand to engage in any large scale bond package without having a construction management firm that manages them. And that's their job. And that firm works. And one of the things that Sandy was talking about was compliance at the end. It's their job to make sure that the GC, the general contractor, has met all the local county building inspecting codes and the fire marshal. The fire marshal is one that tells you when it's done and you can move in, not the contractor, the fire marshal. And it's the construction management firm's duty to monitor the construction for completion, and they're following the rules and not cutting corners and won't have to be a bunch of change orders and stuff that's not by code. They monitor that, and they're the liaison between the construction company and the authorities, which is the fire marshal and the building inspector. They're there on site when the building inspector comes. The last building that I was involved building, we had, this is not an estimate or a guess, kept track of it. We had 114 separate fire marshal and building inspector inspections during the construction process. Was 114 individual inspections. If you have another job, if you work in the school business, think about that. You would have to have been at 114 meetings over this one building. That's a fool's errand to think that somebody could have a job and that just be a part of the job. Those people are on site pretty much. I mean, that was a 2-year project. That's 104 weeks. There was 114 inspections in 104 weeks. That's in a week. And they can last anywhere from 15 minutes to all day. Once a week for 2 years for that one building. Now, a lot of folks think that's money wasted. It's money well spent. If you get delays, if you get change orders, if you get things that are bad, it can really cost you. And then finally on that rent. Everybody understands how construction works, I hope. It works on a draw system. Does anybody understand what the draw system is? Can you explain it to me? Sandy talked about having a scope of the project, and what you have is you have a sheet. I've got one here somewhere to pull it out and show you if I can find it. And basically, it's a list of things, a punch list of completed items that at the end totals 100%. And so when the foundation is in, that's 5%. When the floor is in, that's 10%. When the walls are in, that's 15%. When the roof is on, that's 20%. When the electrical is 25, plumbing 30. You see what I mean? As you add these things, there's a percentage over at the end. You say, well, Dale, what difference does that make? That's so you'll know how much to pay the construction, the general contractor. That's called a draw. That's how that works. You don't give them all the money up front. How many you say, well, these people they're going to do us right. No, they're not. No, they're not. How many times have you seen on the local news where somebody came and charged the homeowner this and didn't come back? Or, the stories of unfinished projects, there's by the millions. That's why you have a punch list, as it's called. And as they hit certain metrics, and somebody's there to check off and say, "Yep, that's good. The foundation is in. The building inspector comes and approved it. All right, that's 5%. We give you 5% of your money. The electrical's in. That's 5% more. The electrical, the county building inspector comes and your electrical passes your electrical. You get your next 5% draw." That's how all that works together with the money. That's why you got to have somebody who's working with the architect, working with the construction firm, and working with the inspection people to make sure that you don't get ahead of the draws. I was handed a 200, I can't make this up. I was handed a punch list with 200 pages of items out of a large bond package that Charlotte May. I met with the architect, the construction management, the architect, and the construction general contractor, which was Cabarrus Construction. And here's 200 pages. And what he said to me, he said, "That's over $1 million worth of things. Y'all don't owe me but another $100,000. Y'all have a nice day." And he just got up and walked out. Why would he spend $1 million to get 100,000? They had overdrawn. They had given him too much money for the amount of work that he had done. And with a 200-page punch list that my predecessor had not managed very well, there was over $1 million worth of work and only $100,000 left owed to him. He just got up and left. That was the end of the meeting. I'm looking back, I'm surprised he even bothered to show up. That's what happens when you get ahead of the draws, when you pay more than the work has been done. At some point, the general contractor, and especially the subcontractors, when there's only a little bit of money left and a lot of work or a lot of expense on their part, they just walk away. You've got to have somebody that's in charge of that: architect, construction firm, and the inspector, somebody that's in the center of that universe, that orbit, that triangle, that is making sure that the architect, that what he drew and what we want, we're getting that. The construction firm is delivering, and it's being inspected, and it's good enough that it passed the inspection, and that we're not getting ahead on the money, on the draws. That's the reality of those three things from tonight's lesson. Those are the three most important things. Don't let somebody external drive where you pick your site. Look at your population density. Don't and look 40 years down the road. Look at maybe building multiple schools or multiple buildings. That's the first thing in sight. On the architect, don't try to save money. Make sure that you get a building that's appropriate for your climate and your use. And third is make sure that you understand that triangle of the architect, the general contractor, and the inspectors, and that somebody has got to be the liaison between the three of them to make sure that you get what you paid for, that it's quality, that it passes inspection, and that you don't get upside down on the draws where you're left with an incomplete project and not enough money to complete it because you've paid out too much. Those are the three biggies from my career that I have seen in these areas that you get in trouble and end up not going well. So here's my final. This is the cautionary tale. All right. Watching our time, man, right on to. Let's see. So we're gonna build, they got a bond to build 4 middle schools in Burke County. Look at all that rock work. Look at those copper gutters. All that fancy brickwork. Man, did that look good. Nice, nice facility. All right. Now let's look at this one. Oh, I don't know how to make it stop. Now, look at this facility. Do you see any copper gutters? Do you see any fancy brickwork or rock work on this facility? This one just looks like a prison. And the inside night and day as well. So they were going to build 4 middle schools. What happened after they built the first two? All the money was gone. They spent $1 million just on the rock work on each of the two. I mean, they between the copper gutters and the rock work on the front archways, they spent enough to build one of the schools. The other, so the superintendent got fired. And when they built the next two in those communities, they got the prison design: block walls, cement floors, no terrazzo, no marble, no rock work. I mean, and their library didn't have all these archways and 2 stories and all that. It just looked like a prison when they built it. I'm not making that up. It literally looked like a prison. Uh, Block walls, just cinder block painted cinder, um, and cement floors. And the bathrooms looked like a prison. I mean, just as cheap as you could get, because they spent all the money on the first two. Um, because they didn't have a construction management firm. And they went first class, but the first class they ran out of money. They spent on the first two, they spent all the money for all four. Uh, and so that's why I said, those were I was the first school when I was principal there. I was the first school that they used a construction management firm. That's why we got one, because they had just gotten they had that when I went there, the first two had just been built. They hadn't even built the second two yet because they didn't have the money. They ran out of money, and they fired the superintendent got a new one and hired a construction firm after that. So no more of that craziness. I mean, who needs a rock archway and copper gutters on the school building? They had terrazzo floors inside, marble. I mean, it was beautiful. But you spent the money for 4 schools on 2. Um, that superintendent was Jim Wilson. He didn't last long. You don't make a mistake like that where you contract 4 schools and get 2 and you're out of money. And everybody else is standing around wanting to know where our money is. We're starting on these other 2 schools. Where's our money? We've bought the sites. We're getting ready to go. Well, when are we going to break ground? Well, we don't have any money. Uh, and so at the end of the day, I cannot highly recommend enough that if you have a seat at the table, that you make sure that if you can, you get a construction management firm. That you don't get into things like that. You don't get into cost overruns, change orders, and a punch list with $1 million of little things and no money, and your contractor just walk away from it. These are all things that will cost you your job. You don't make these mistakes but one time, and then somebody else gets the opportunity to make them. So that's our lesson on facilities, on site, architect, and planning. And for the evening, Sandy, excellent job as always. I appreciate you and your hard work on your very clear, very concise. And so I wanted to add the reality of these things. These are make or break kind of things, and this is very public, as you know. Um, you can't hide these kinds of mistakes, um, uh, and they will get you. All right. Anybody have any questions? Again, applause, kudos to Sandy for an excellent job. All right, let's look at our share my screen. I'll have to pull it back up because I minimalized it there for a minute. Let's see if I can get it to come back up here. All right, looking at our weekly schedule before we go this evening. Today was Zoom class 4, the 16th. We'll be back on the 23rd, and the Thursday you'll get to see me the next 2 weeks. All right, on the 23rd, that'll be Shaquetta, and then Jimmy is on the 30th with their chapter presentations. And then after that, we have our weekend in Goldsboro on the November the 8th and 9th. And then we have one more Zoom session after that on Thursday the 20th. I would like to not have to do a makeup session and conclude with that one so y'all can be done by Thanksgiving. So that's the lineup. All right. Anybody have anything else for the good of the group tonight? All right. It's good to see y'all tonight. Work on your dissertations. Let me know if I can help you. Thank you. Good night.